right, Jeff, let's jump in and talk about foundations. We're in Southeast Texas. This ground moves a lot. I know people, as representing buyers for the last 21 years, people freak out on foundations. Let's chat a little bit about that. What's the difference between, say, foundation failure and just settlement?
So that's a great question. It is a hot button typically on every existing home. Typically anything down of I-10 here south of Houston is more prone to that because we're in highly expansive soils, and that is a main contributing factor of a lot of foundations moving on existing homes.
Right.
The thing is that when you're with the inspector obviously he's looking for all that during his inspection. He's looking for foundation issues, whether that is a result of or contributes to brick cracking, stucco issues, whatever the case may be, window issues, cracks on the inside.
Right.
And the inspector really has to put all of that together in order to accurately deliver that to the buyer.
Right.
Purpose being is this: you don't want to scare a buyer by telling them you've got a crack in a little crack in the brick wall or inside that you got foundation structural damage, because they don't know. All they see is dollar values and they see a failed system. So what you have to do is take everything as far as what you're seeing and deliver that information as best as possible to say this, is that corner cracks are given 95% of every foundation here and there.
I have plenty on all the homes I've ever owned.
Okay, so tamp that fear down. Just say they're normal. And maybe you turn around. I turn around a lot of times and look at our neighbor and look, they've got one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they've got one. So as far as, and then you get into situations in an older home where they didn't do proper drainage. Okay, they got a lot of water sitting next to the foundation. It contributes to highly expansive soils. You got a lot of movement in the foundation, and you start getting foundation failure. The thing is that, are you at the point of foundation failure, or you just have some minimal movement, or there's some other causes for brick cracking and things like that? When you get into the point where an inspector honestly says, I think you have a little excessive movement here, and the structure itself seems like that maybe there's some foundation issues that need further evaluation for those that are in the business. So you get into the foundation repair companies, you get into structural engineers. I found that an engineer come out and do an evaluation of that. In the event that you don't want to buy the house and all of a sudden you weren't informed of that and you didn't take the steps necessary, just that few little $100 up front prior to closing could have helped you determine whether this is normal, or now I've got to have a foundation company do work on it and these repairs. And that generally, hopefully within that period, working with the agent, can get that information known prior to actually your option period closing or whatever the case may be, and to know that you need to go a little deeper on the foundation as far as are there significant issues here that determines whether you want to go forward or you may want to step out. So,
what about I know some houses, people, they're like, why do I have this seam up and down the side of my house? The expansion joint, of course. What is the purpose of the expansion joint?
So the expansion joint is just that. So you have the older homes didn't really put those type of building practices in there. A lot of your newer homes do. They've kind of all evolved. It's a given when engineers develop the foundation. It's a given the foundation is going to move. Okay, so that's a given. Now the foundation moves. Now the brick being not structural, it's cosmetic in nature. We don't want to overstress the brick by too much movement, and the brick says, hey, too much, I'm going to crack on you. And now you got all these cracks in the brick, so the purpose is to put the expansion joints in there that allows give or leeway within the wall. So when it does move, the brick is not forced to move or crack in other areas.
So it's the foundation is, I don't want to say, it's dry this summer, it's doing one thing. When it rains a lot, it's doing another thing. So that expansion joint is allowing that movement, kind of like an expansion joint in the driveway?
Exactly. So what you see on the driveway and sidewalks, that's the purpose. It has the same thing in the wall structure, whether it be stucco, stone, brick, etc. It should be there. On the older homes, not so much, but that can be talked about. But when it starts going through and starts showing signs on the inside, whether it be cracks and openings of windows, the corner of windows, doors, you've all heard of the doors not closing, the windows not closing, those type of things. So, but that all needs to be discussed during that walkthrough meeting, or at least in the report.
Okay, so great. So it's the totality of everything. It's doors binding, windows, everything. One last question: what is kind of the rule on distance and your delta between a mark point, say at the front door, if you're measuring, this is spot 0, and you go to the various points of the house, what is the usual allowable, because no slab is perfectly
Correct.
level, right?
Right.
I think that's a misconception,
Right.
that the day they pour it, it's 100% level. But what's the variance that's generally allowed?
So you have what we call houses on slab foundations, solid foundations, and then you have houses on pier beam.
Pier and beam,
The
right.
pier and beam is going to move around quite a bit. Okay, so what in the event there's a pier and beam house that has had move around, it moves around quite a bit. So you have that different variations as
Right.
maybe you walk through when you were looking at the house, and the floor seemed like it was rolling.
Right.
So you got a lot of movement there, even in a house on grade or house slab on foundation. They're still never going to be perfectly level.
Right.
Even when they pour it, when originally it's not going to be perfectly level. So if you come in there and you can feel it through walking through a normal inspection, you can make that notation, uneven flooring.
Right.
You can see maybe a dip down on certain exterior walls. You can have
Sure.
that conversation. If there was such a concern about it really being too much,
Right.
and then the buyer said during that vetting process, I would like to have a foundation levelness
Right.
inspection.
Right.
I do those where it comes out, you have a highly sophisticated digital equipment that goes through there, and it does all the data points
Right.
digitally all around the house.
Right.
So being that no foundation is going to be level, you might on front left corner be 0.1, and then far right corner be 0.9.
Right.
So if it's a half inch out, 3/4 of an inch out, sometimes that's all within tolerance. It's pretty good. We start getting 1.5 inches, 2 inches plus, and then other factors develop where you start getting cracks in the wall. That story now, it really comes together as far as, hey, you got a significant movement here, and you need more additional
Right.
services to come out. Foundation company, engineering
Right,
company.
come check it out. Well, look, folks, there you have it. Foundations is a big issue here in Southeast Texas. Jeff's a great asset, great tool. So if you're buying a house, he's going to be able to help you go down that path. And then, as he said, ultimately, if you need to get a foundation company to come out, or a PE, a professional engineer, that can certainly be done, and we can talk about those type of things later. But we appreciate you stopping by, and stay tuned. We'll have more little segments like this. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.